bem-vindos ao Loki Portuguese. Hoje vamos ver tópico um pouco especial. Today we're going to look at a very special topic. Recently, one of my students asked me, we've been working on Portuguese for a bit now. I got some of the basics down. I'm feeling confident with just generating simple conversations and getting around, doing the day-to-day, my day-to-day business. But she's missing something, right? She's missing friends, like these social connections, these meaningful social connections that would just make her experience that much better, right? Having people to share ideas with and just interact with people in a more natural and authentic way. Because it's not, living in Portugal isn't just about, being able to talk to your cab driver, your, at the grocery store clerk or at the CTT post office. You want more than that. Most people are looking for more, and it's such a beautiful setting. Portugal's gorgeous. It'd be great if we could expand a little bit and share those experiences with others that are like-minded or have similar tastes in life, similar goals in life. And ultimately, that's what this video is for, is to help you try to understand culturally how friendship functions. And it's not very different from the U.S. context if you're coming from the U.S. or I imagine everywhere. This is humanity, right? It's more of a human thing. In my experience, I've made friends from all over the world, and literally everywhere I've gone, I've established some sort of network of people that just through genuine interaction in one language or another, you create that. You do the best you can. So again, this video is really to kind of maybe give you some insights into the cultural realities of how friendship works, the little, intricate pieces related to that concept, and then maybe give you some key phrases to kind of break the ice, to kind of get started interacting with people directly. A couple of things you need to know about Portuguese people, and again, I'm very cautious to generalize because humans are complex regardless of where they're from, and I don't want to be like the Portuguese are X, Y, and Z, and that's it. Like, no, that's clearly not it. I'm talking kind of like tendencies, and again, based on my own personal experiences, that I can tell you worked for me or didn't work for me. I've definitely had some interactions that weren't as friendly. And I can probably tell you why that happened as well, at least from my perspective. I can't speak for the other, but I can tell you why I think some circumstances didn't quite work out for me in this regard, in regards to meeting new people in a positive way, okay? With that being said, I've never had a real negative interaction in Portugal regarding friends. I've had some falling outs, if you will, but I think it's just people going their separate ways too, and just going in different directions at different points in our lives. But again, I can talk about that as well and explain how that may have happened, if there's some cultural element there that you can take from that to either avoid or I don't know, just embrace and work with. But a couple of things you want to know about Portuguese culture when it comes to relationships. And at the onset, in most instances, Portuguese people are a little bit guarded. They have their families, their groupings, but it's a process to, and I'm making this sound like it's like some stone wall that you have to like break down. It's not like that either. It's just, there's a hesitation, I guess, to really embrace something. But the moment that there's something that clicks, something that you have in common, something that they are curious about regarding your own culture and background, I feel like those are all openings that then allow for really strong relationships to be forged, if that makes sense. So take your time. Don't be too pushy. Don't be too overwhelming. I feel like I'm talking to people about dating, which ultimately probably is in line with this, right? Hopefully, at least for me, I took the progression of meeting somebody who became my friend that ultimately grew into something much more strong, meaningful, and romantic. But just take your time, okay? Take your time with things and let things develop over time. Don't be overly pushy about things. Know when to kind of just back off a little bit and give some space. But ultimately, that's kind of how I would first conceptualize relationships with Portuguese speakers, Portuguese people. Again, I don't want to generalize because again, people are very complex. Culturally speaking, it's not going to be every Portuguese person's like this. It's obviously not that way. But there are these things to just keep in mind that I think are honestly just universal. I don't know that it's particular to Portuguese or Spanish or Asian cultures. It's just take your time, get to know things, don't force things. And that's kind of my motto for most things in life. Just go with it. Just follow what you feel is okay. Take time. Life is short, but it's long, right? It's slow living. And that's another thing, right? Keep that in mind. Portugal is a slow kind of paced country, for in my opinion, which is good. That's a good thing. So just be easy with things. Don't be too forceful. People don't like to be pressed. They don't like to be rushed. They don't like to be pressured into things. They take time. And deep friendships take time, right? It's not something that happens overnight. In terms of where do you gather with people? How do you like interact with people in a way that feels genuine and authentic? And ultimately, Portugal has this very vibrant still cafe culture. People chill. People chill in cafes and spend hours hanging out when they have the time, with their friends, with people that they get to know. And I'll give you a little piece from this weekend. My wife and I went out for the first time in Portugal as adults, with kids. Our kids are a little bit older now, and they can kind of spend a little bit of time home alone. And they allowed us to go out for a little bit, and we met a number of people that we had never met before. Just kind of being in the same space and like generating conversation based on, hey, where you from? You from here? Yeah, cool. Oh, I'm from here. Just those sorts of things will stimulate conversation. Will stimulate curiosity, especially if you're a foreigner coming into Portugal. If you're from the U.S., the U.K., it doesn't matter where you're from. There's something different about here versus there. So there's these points where you can kind of, play off of each other and ask questions, right? Asking questions and answering questions really is a main function of friendship, right? You want to know how somebody's doing. What are they up to? What are you into? These sorts of questions, and we'll do a follow-up video with how to ask these questions in the future, in the short-term future. So just keep that in mind. There are plenty of opportunities. Now, those are just kind of really informal. Going to a cafe, going to a restaurant, going to a bar, whatever you're into. Those are all things that are very much part of Portuguese culture. They're great opportunities to socialize as well. But don't forget, you probably have interests that you're into. Maybe if you play a sport, if you work out, you go to the beach. There are lots of things that Portuguese people spend their time doing outside of working and hanging out at cafes. If you have those things that you're interested in, that you're into, it's probably a good idea to learn the vocabulary and phrasings that are associated with those activities, because then you can use them. You can employ them in conversation. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I play music. I play guitar. I create like music with different instruments. And a lot of my friends in Portugal right now, not from high school, but people that I met recently, are people in that kind of realm of making music or into music. So a lot of our conversations revolve around instruments, theories, concepts. Hey, have you checked out this new device? Have you checked out this new drum machine? Have you checked out, oh man, my guitar strings broke. Where can I buy a guitar? Like those sorts of conversations around themes and topics that you're into. And if you're into those things, or if you're into guitar, learn everything there is to say about guitars. Like, how do I say, oh, I play a Fender Telecaster. What do you play? Oh, what kind of amp do you have? Like that lingo associated with that topic that you're into, with that thing that you do. So again, it's important to think about those things, right? How to like engage with people. Another thing culturally that you may want to know about Portuguese people, again, just generalizing for the sake of this video, but your results may vary. You might find timid Portuguese people. You may find very open and direct Portuguese people, and that's a thing that I think at least most Portuguese people that I know, myself included, what we appreciate is the honesty and directness and authenticity that comes from interactions. And I know that to some people, that's not something that you may be comfortable with. But personally, I'd rather know how somebody thinks about something, how somebody feels about me, or how somebody feels about something that I say or do, than be sitting in this world of reading between the lines. I don't like to read between the lines. I do it all the time anyway, but I don't like to do it with my relationships. It really is something that kind of aggravates me. I don't like passive aggressive attitudes. I think that doesn't work for me in terms of friendship. So if somebody is passive aggressive toward me or has these really kind of, making me read between the lines as to why somebody's upset or offended, that's not going to work for me. So I tend to avoid those sorts of things and engage with people that are more direct and willing to have open and honest lines of communication about whatever the topic is, or about whatever it is, whether it's, some political opinion or, music tastes. I don't like that. It's not my kind of music. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, it's not. No, you don't like it. You don't like it. Tell me that so we can kind of discuss why. Maybe it opens up some insights or at least helps me grow as a person. So this is just kind of general friendship, but Portuguese people do tend to be a bit more honest, authentic, direct in how they interact with their friend groups. So I mentioned sports before. So if you play sports, you play music, those are all things that allow you to just have commonalities with people. And that's obviously very important in terms of making friendships. So, there's lots of options if you're in the Lisbon, Porto areas. Algarve is probably going to have lots of, activities that you can engage in. But, maybe you don't live in one of these more robust cosmopolitan cities. But at the same time, you're also probably going to have a more authentic. I don't know if that's the right word. But I feel like you'll probably interact more with Portuguese people instead of, hearing somebody speaking American English behind you and interacting with them. And then that becomes your person, which is fine too. That's great too. Maybe, power in numbers. If there's two people that speak English and you guys can help each other out, and then within that find friendships with Portuguese people, it's all about your own personal journey when it comes to this. But ultimately, you're going to want to, if you want to learn the language, and that's, I think, why most of you might be even watching this video, you've probably realized that the real immersion is going to happen with authentic, genuine conversations, right? That's really the deal, is that those sorts of interactions are your best teachers. Those are your best language learning opportunities. For me personally, I don't know if you've watched my other videos, but I moved to Portugal in 1997 as a 15-year-old with my parents, and we lived, or I live here now, but back after some time in the U.S. But from 1997 to 2000 to late 2001, I spent those 5 years, 4.5 years in Portugal. That was my life, right? Went to school, went to college, played sports, hung out. That was my life as a teenager into my late teens. I moved when I was 19. So those 4.5 years that I was here, I went to school, and obviously, that was difficult. I spoke Portuguese coming into Portugal, but I did not speak at the level that my peers were at. I could speak, the very basics, like I'm hungry, I need to go home. Just those sort of like basic interactions. But I wasn't able to just jump into 10th grade philosophy or 10th grade physics or chemistry and just internalize all of the things that were being thrown at me on the chalkboard. It just wasn't possible. So I needed a lot of help with the academic side of things. And I got a tutor that was very, very helpful in terms of getting me up to speed to be at my peers' level. So I can be, in the realm of where they were in terms of, doing well on exams, getting good grades. I never failed a class. Well, that was a point of pride for me. And I phrase it that way because I didn't have great grades. But I never failed a class. I never stayed back. I never had to repeat any sort of subject. I just made it through and did the best that I could. And I think for my situation, I did pretty well. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't have a tutor helping me multiple days a week. Three days a week, I think, is what I had for a couple of hours each day. And that was really intense learning Portuguese, the academic Portuguese. but I'll be perfectly honest that the day-to-day speech, right, the interactions with peers, with adults, like just knowing that kind of navigating that realm of how to interact with peers, how to date, how to, like, that sort of thing, but that teenagers do. That was my friends, though. My friends helped me with that, and not that they were giving me language lessons. It wasn't anything like that. It was just my observations, um, trial and error, saying things, and getting a reaction that wasn't quite what I was looking for, and internalizing those things. So I tend to not be as self-conscious as others, but I still am. We all are, I think. But I just try to not really let that affect me and make me, go into some like little cocoon and hide from the world. No, it was like, yeah, I made a mistake. I'm the American, blah blah blah, and then we'll move on. But now I don't really feel like people can even tell. I can code switch. Posso começar a falar português de um momento para o outro e ninguém se vai a perceber que eu sou americano. Pode haver uma palavra ou outra que talvez não seja tão, sei lá, seja um pouco menos fora do comum para portugueses, mas eu sinceramente acho que sou português culturalmente. See what I mean? Like, I can just code switch and it doesn't matter. And this is all because listening, really being observant of people. I then went into languages later on in school and became more, um, you know, professionally ingrained in the field. But the way that I speak now is essentially how I was speaking leaving high school, entering college. So that was huge for me. It was just my friend group. So that's what I'm trying to get at, is that these friend groups are going to be very important for you because they will help you. They will kind of just say, hey, you say it this way instead of that way. And if it's somebody that's got some tact, they're not going to make you feel self-conscious about it. They're going to help you get there. And vice versa. Remember, English is a very valuable language all over the world. You may be able to help somebody learn English or perfect their English through your interactions. So you want it to be a two-way street, though. You don't want to be speaking English just because that's easy for you, and they're getting something out of it. You need to kind of work both ways with that, which leads me to the idea of language exchanges. Maybe you can find, and online is definitely a place to do this, right? Seek out social media, create a group on any of the social media platforms that you can do this on. Create a channel, go on Facebook. It's not my cup of tea, but you can definitely do that and find people that are willing to do this. There's really no shortage if you want to put in the effort to find people that you can work with. Whether that's a teacher, could be. I mean, I have one-to-one classes. Some of my students, we spend some classes just kind of talking about these sorts of things. This video is literally coming from one of my classes with a student that's asking me, how can I do this? How can I make more friends? How can I get to know people? So, like I said, do what you can. There's lots of opportunities out there, paid, unpaid. Seek out what you can. If you are curious about mine, check out lowkeyportuguese.com to get more information about what I have to offer. But even if you just want to send me an email and I can help you maybe in your area, point you in the right direction, I can do that for you. No worries. So again, different types of hobby groups, clubs. American sports, I will say this, Portuguese people do tend to watch NBA. A lot of them watch NFL football. I personally don't care for it anymore, but they do. But the sports that you're going to get the most interaction with or about in Portugal is football, but soccer, what we as Americans refer to as soccer. Like, if you happen to get into one of the big three clubs, Benfica, I definitely recommend Benfica, Sporting or Porto, you're going to find people from those clubs that will be willing to debate, discuss, talk crap about the other clubs. So that's also a good entry point if that's something that you enjoy, if you genuinely enjoy it, or you'd like to get to know it. That's possible too. You may not know anything about it, but maybe you would like to get more into it. In my part of the country, I live in the Figueira da Foz region, roughly between Lisbon and Porto on the coast. There's lots of surf schools here. People go running. There are gyms. There are lots of different activities, outdoor activities, group activities. There are music conservatories. There's really no shortage. There are lots of language schools too, like really small informal language schools for foreigners. So joining any one of those types of activities is going to help you just meet people, put you in a situation where you have an opportunity, right? If you don't go out and like interact, it's going to be hard. I mean, you have the internet, and that's a possibility, but I definitely think you're gonna have a better time and an easier time interacting with Portuguese speakers if you head out, if you know get be brave and go out and do things, and just accept you're gonna make mistakes. That's really the key, I think. If you can drop your inhibitions in terms of sounding foolish, whatever that means. I think when you're learning, there is no sounding foolish. You're trying, right? Which leads me back to how Portuguese people tend to enjoy the fact that foreigners come in and try to speak Portuguese. Okay, I'm probably gonna make some people angry by saying this, but I spent 3 weeks in Spain with my family, and in that time, I can speak Spanish roughly. I taught Spanish, but I can't really say I speak it in the fluent, accurate way, the way that Spanish speakers do. And Spain has lots of different regions as well, and it kind of varies from region to region, the type of Spanish that's spoken, if they're speaking Spanish at all. But my experience was not the same as in Portugal. And again, I do speak Portuguese, but my wife is still learning, and she says this, that she felt that in Spain people weren't as accommodating, weren't as ingratiated by the fact that she was trying to speak Spanish, or that I felt that too. Like, I tried to always, I'm in their country, I tried to speak Spanish and meet them there, but Portuguese and Spanish have lots of commonalities, whether we're conjugating verbs or just inherent vocabulary. There's certain vocabulary terms like prepositions, and the building blocks of language are not that different. And man, I'll tell you, like, I felt like people were purposefully not trying to understand me the moment that I said that I was Portuguese. I had somebody tell me that we were asking for some toast with butter, pão com manteiga. Okay, it's great. It's not pão com manteiga, right? Not that different. And the guy's like, oh no, no tenemos. I'm like, okay, you don't have that, but it's a breakfast spot that you sell avocado toasts. Sure, whatever. Ultimately, the guy was just not trying to be accommodating. And then he happened to ask where we were from, and I was like, oh, soy de Portugal. I'm from Portugal. And he's like, no hablo nada de portugués. No hablo nada. I was like, oh, nada mismo. No habla nada mismo de portugués. Nada is literally the same term in Portuguese and Spanish. So it's kind of like, all right, I get it. We're not on the same page. Whatever historical nonsense these people have with each other is the reality. But I'd always heard that. When Spanish speakers come to Portugal, they don't really try to speak Portuguese. I don't know if they don't have the ability to just pronounce things slightly differently, or if it's just purposeful. But I will say that Portuguese people, and I've seen this with my own two eyes time and time again, when my wife says something like, oh, falo pouco de português, sou americana, sou dos Estados Unidos, they immediately were like, oh, you speak, já falas tão bem, ela já fala tão bem, she speaks so well already, like, to me. So there's this, like, kind of, I don't know, like, ingratiation is the word that I would use, that when non-Portuguese speakers try to speak Portuguese, and try, really, not just show up somewhere and be like, I want 2 espressos. If you try, that's definitely already putting you in the camp of, all right, this person's cool, that person's not. That person that's not even trying, that's just a straight tourist and isn't trying to even get to know this, they're not gonna, some places they just want your money, they don't care. But I think in my part of the country, where it's a little bit less, it's a tourist destination as well in the summer, but it's a little bit less directed at that. It's more Portuguese people and Portuguese foreigners returning to Portugal for a few weeks in the summer that are here. There are definitely a growing contingency of foreigners that don't speak Portuguese, that are not culturally Portuguese, but ultimately we tend to see more Portuguese tourism in my part of the country, which I think gives it a little bit more authenticity and genuineness in terms of Portuguese culture. We don't have lots of fast food places. There are no Starbuckses here. It's just Portuguese living with a couple peppered in. There's a McDonald's and a Burger King that's being built that's just slightly accommodating to foreigners, but Portuguese people like that stuff too. So you can definitely have an authentic experience in my part of the country. And it's still it's a very beautiful place, personally. But I shouldn't be talking about this because to keep things a little bit cheaper, not have the foreigners come in and drive costs up, but trying to give you some insights here. So another thing you want to think about are local events and festivals, like things that there are just going to be lots of people out and about, people that are, they're drinking and kind of lowering their inhibitions to begin with. That's always good, I think. It's nothing bad's going to happen. I think you're going to have a great time, actually, if you go to, say, one of the, this is more in June and mid-July, as Festas dos Santos Populares, like the feasts of the patron saints. It's not necessarily a religious activity that people engage in. It's just popular culture. People going out and having a good time, having some food, some drinks, spending time with their friends and families. But if you just go out, even by yourself, you'll most likely engage with people somehow in these events. If you go out and just try to be curious about what's going on. Hey, what's going on here? ¿Qué pasa aquí? Like, if you can learn a few expressions, that may just open the door to something. So you really, a running theme here, if you haven't picked up on things, is you kind of have to put yourself out there a little bit and be willing to just sound like you don't know how to speak the language, because you will never speak the language if you don't just try to do it. I know that sounds, I don't know, I'm not sure what the right term is there, but it has to take some effort. And just like anything, I remember when I picked up guitar, it's a language, right? Learning an instrument is essentially learning a language, playing something, communicating through the strings or through the keys. And it feels really strange, right? Our fingers are not really ready to do this. They're not really ready to like make the different changes and different chords, and it kind of hurts a little bit. You get cramps and your fingers get all like calloused, and just, in terms of guitar. But if you just stick with it, if you keep doing it, keep practicing and learning little tiny bits, bit by bit, eventually you can play guitar. Like, you don't necessarily even need a teacher. I've never had a teacher teach me guitar. It's like I took my knowledge from other instruments that I've played as a child, as a kid, and later on in life picked up this instrument and just kind of had basic theory about music, but going through the growing pains and the discomfort for me is really just lifelong learnership. Everything is like this. If when I bought a house and I needed to do the different DIY projects in my house, I didn't know how to do any of them. I'd seen my dad do some things, but I can't say that I really was like involved in them. But I knew like, all right, you go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, go to one of the, big box stores. And in Portugal, it's the same thing. They have similar stores, just for anybody that's wondering. Which is another opportunity to engage with people, right? If you just need to ask questions about how to do something, online's great for that. You can definitely find groups for Portuguese DIY groups that you can ask these sorts of contracting questions and maybe get some help. That, again, whatever topic you're into. I didn't know how to do any of those things, but you do them. You make mistakes. You fix the mistakes if they're, really grave, serious mistakes. Or you take something from that experience and you move on to the next time and just do it better the next time. And with human beings, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying go around disposing of potential friends. Like, that didn't work with that person, so I'm going to move on to this person. And I'm not saying that, but take that little interaction at the grocery store, that friendliness with the clerk, or just asking questions, telling them that you like something that they have on, or that your glasses are really nice. Those little things could stir up something. And if you don't do those things, you're not going to have a chance. If you just stay in your bubble, you'll stay in your bubble. Like, that's guaranteed. Like, things can happen, but it's unlikely that it's going to happen. So, starting conversations with little things, asking about local customs, foods, places, that's always good. Acts of kindness, right? Small gestures. Just if you can, I'd like to invite you for coffee, for a neighbor or something. Somebody that's helped you out. That's, building trust with people. That's culturally, these things are not that different. I think perhaps from my context in the US, I don't think people tend to know their neighbors as much. And not that I'm, super friendly or super involved in my neighbors' lives, but occasionally we need each other, right? My car was dead. My battery was dead a couple years ago. Went to my neighbor, just rang the doorbell and said, hey, can you help me out? I was wondering if you could give me a jump in my car and this and that. They invited me in, showed me around the house, talked about their caravan. Oh, you guys have, me and my wife want to buy a caravan someday and travel, throughout Europe with that. It immediately, little things will generate links to people. So factor that in. Like, just be open and try to engage. And there's also the idea of reciprocity, right? If somebody needs help from you, help them, right? If you can, try to help in some way, right? Portuguese people like to be very helpful. In my experience, I have friends that, I'll give you an example, a direct example. I was shipping something to a friend who's actually in Luxembourg, but he's a college roommate, and I was shipping a computer to him so he can fix. He fixes MacBooks, and he's just well versed in that, in those sorts of devices. So I shipped it to him, and I didn't think anything of it. I just went to the post office and shipped him the computer. Okay, paid quite a bit because I was trying to overnight it, two-day air it through the Portuguese post office. And when I told him how much I paid, one of my other friends was like, dude, por que não disseste? Why didn't you tell me that you were doing that? And I just didn't think. He's like, mano, eu fazia isso, eu arranjava-te maneira de fazer muito mais barato, que ficasse muito mais barato. In other words, why didn't you tell me? I could have helped you out, and I would have gotten that way cheaper for you. But I didn't know. But the long story short is, if you don't know, ask someone. Ask a friend that you have, if you have a Portuguese person that you can rely on, or ask questions like this to. Do that. They like to help. Portuguese people find that helping is part of, it's ingrained in them. They like to feel helpful. They like to feel like they're, helping people out. So don't avoid that. Embrace it. But be on the other end of that as well. When something comes up that you can be helpful about or with, be helpful. That's definitely something that I would encourage. And then just staying connected. I think that's something that's really important. After we all have cell phones nowadays. Get somebody's cell phone number. WhatsApp is very popular in Portugal. They tend to use that a lot more than just regular text messaging, SMS stuff. Get their number. Invite them out for something. Again, don't be too pushy. Don't let's hang out every day. Like, it doesn't have to be like that either. But just, hey, what's up? What are you doing today? That's it. That's a simple, open-ended, I've got nothing going on. You want to go grab a coffee? Yeah, let's go. Boom. There it is. There's your bread. And the other thing is, you meet one Portuguese person. Through my experience, I made friends with a friend of a friend that I didn't know this guy growing up when I was here. He's a little bit younger than me, but nonetheless, we've become very friendly. We've become really good friends over the last 3-4 years. And because of that, I've met so many people through him that I'm so grateful for, because they're usually people that are into music. They're usually people that are into the sports that I'm into. We watch soccer together. So inherently, almost on a bi-weekly basis, I'm meeting some new person. And sometimes we click a lot. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's just another person that you meet, but it's still an opportunity to bounce your language off of and working your way with another person, another relationship that you can develop. So it's just consistency and trying to be there, be a presence, and care. I don't know, be genuine and care. Ask questions about how things are going. How's your family? How's, you were telling me about this thing last time. How's that going, right? Just showing interest, right? Demonstrating interest. Feels like the Always Sunny Dennis system here, but it's not that at all. For those that are aware of the reference. Personal space, again, no one to respect boundaries. If people aren't willing to talk about something, don't be pushy. That's what I was really getting at before. Don't try to impose yourself in situations like, oh no, tell me. No, don't. Just get the social cues. If somebody's not willing to talk about something, they're not willing to talk about it. Avoid stereotypes, obviously. I know that I've been generalizing here, but I'm really trying to be conscious of the fact that I'm doing this. And really, Portuguese people, just like any human being, any culture, there's going to be variation, right? But there are certain cultural tropes that you can kind of expect. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Don't think that every Portuguese person likes bacalhau com batatas. Don't think that every Portuguese person likes certain things, that they all drink coffee. Most of them do, but actually most of my friends do, but there are some that I don't really drink coffee anymore. Friends that are vegan, like friends that are very meat and potatoes culture, but there's lots of vegans in Portugal, lots of differences when it comes to those sorts of things. So avoid those sorts of stereotypes, and definitely don't verbalize them. Think them if you need to. There's always some truth to a stereotype, but not in the way that we think as individuals. That's really what I'd be careful about. Not every Portuguese person likes soccer, for example. It's not like that. They may all have a club because their parents like the particular club, but there are lots of different sports. There are people that are into surfing. I was getting a tattoo not that long ago. The guy asked me, my tattoo friend asked me, "Oh, are you into?" Because a commercial came on the radio about a soccer game. Are you into soccer? I'm like, well, I am. I used to play, but já joguei, já passei muito tempo a ver futebol, mas no momento, não ligo muito. I don't really follow it. Não ligo muito. I don't really follow it too much. If it's on, it's on. I don't really seek it out. I'm definitely not going to go stop something else that I'm doing to watch a sport. But if I'm out with friends watching a game, yeah, I like that. Mas no, it's not like something that drives my life. Some people do. Some Portuguese people do like that. So again, it's stereotypes. Avoid attributing them to the individuals that you meet. Understand that culturally there may be some stereotypes because just sheer numbers. But the individual, always kind of think about them as somebody swimming in that sea of culture, and they have their own intricacies that they bring to the table. And most people have interests that may not fit into any of those stereotypes. There's lots of surfers, for example, in Portugal. And when I was growing up here, that was kind of something that was starting. But there's a whole culture around that, especially where I live and up and down the coast. There's lots of surfing culture. That's definitely not soccer. That's definitely not something that's stereotypical, I think, about Portugal. But you may think that about Australians or Californians or Hawaiians. Just keep that in mind. Those groups are also not as homogenous as we tend to think. So stereotypes, they're okay to think about and kind of have an idea, but treat the individual that you're dealing with as an individual within that sea of stereotypes, of potential stereotypes. Patience. I think ultimately the patience is the key. It's also not a bad idea. I mentioned before, if you have friends that also speak your language, that understand you culturally, that's another good way, because if you each are making your own individual friendships, then maybe you can share and introduce people, and it's just networking, right? It's ultimately going to come down to this idea of networking. So don't avoid English speakers. I mean, admittedly, if I'm out and about and I hear people speaking English, even though my family and I tend to speak English when we're out together, I don't really go and interact with that necessarily. We have. I mean, if the situation feels right. But I feel like most of the time they're just visiting. They're not really here to. If they need help, I've definitely helped people out. If I overhear somebody that's oh, I don't know what to I will go and help them, because it's just kind of what I do. But I don't insert myself into their lives just because they're speaking English. I hear plenty of people in Figueira da Foz speaking British English, American English, and I just let them do their thing. I'm not there to go sell my language courses or anything like that. But if I see that they need help, I will, because that's the stereotypical Portuguese in me. I want to be helpful. I want to make sure that they're enjoying the thing that I think is really enjoyable, being here in Portugal. So before we go, I want to make sure that I give you something in terms of language that you can use. And I know this is coming at the end of the video, and most people probably didn't make it this far. But, oh well, those of you that did, maybe you can get something out of this. And just a couple of phrases that I think will help you just break the ice. Quebrar o gelo, which is an expression that you can use as well. Quebrar o gelo. I feel like it's a little bit forced. I wouldn't necessarily go, I want to break the ice. Quero quebrar o gelo contigo. Don't use it that way. But a couple of phrases that maybe will help you just to kind of open things up a bit. And then from there, struggle through language. Struggle in the interactions. Use your English. We all have those little things in our pockets. If this needs to be helpful to you, to be able to translate something, use it. I have this motto with that all's fair in love and war, that sort of, all's fair in life. If it gets you by and you can do something and it's not hurting anybody, especially education, use it. Do it. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid. If it's going to get you from point A to point B, use it. Okay, so Google Translate, whatever, it's there for you. If you need a word in a bind, it happens all the time. I'll be out with my friends, and I'm kind of like the Google Translate when it's, a Portuguese speaker and an English speaker. They'll be like, look at me, and they'll be like, hey, what's that word? And I'll just say it because I can code switch. I can go back and forth easily between both languages. So I end up doing that in a much more rapid way than using Google Translate. But you're not going to have me everywhere. Unless you want to pay me to do that, that'd be great too. Maybe there's another avenue of income that I could open up. Is if you need something, just text me real quick. But you have Google Translate. Just use that. That'll get you by in that moment. I wouldn't use it for like academic texts or like governmental things or forms that you're filling out. Make sure you get somebody or you seek out the help that you need for that, because those things can be a little bit more formalized than what you're expecting. But a couple of phrases here, okay? So you're at a cafe, you overhear somebody say something about maybe a band that you like or something that you can say, eu também gosto. I also like it. Eu também gosto de X, whatever X is, whatever you fill in. Também gosto de, okay? That's one phrase. But then maybe you could say something, posso juntar-me a vocês? Can I join you? Posso juntar-me a vocês? And, Portuguese people, they might be a little like, I don't know, but most of the time you're probably going to generate my friends, if I go out and like I said, meet this is a lot of times it's somebody that's not from here, a Spanish person, a Ukrainian person. So they're kind of cosmopolitan in that way of interacting and bringing others into the fold. So don't be shy in doing that sort of thing and like trying to insert yourself or include yourself in a conversation if you overhear something, or just like there are different ways to do that. But posso, can I, may I, juntar-me, join myself to you, a vocês. Posso juntar-me a vocês. Okay? Posso juntar-me a vocês. Can I join you? May I join you? Okay? So it's the verb poder. Posso, can I, may I. Juntar, to join. Me is this reflexive verb of me joining myself to you, a vocês. Remember, vocês is our plural you. That's an easy thing to get into, right? It's a nice conversation. What's the worst thing to say? No. I highly doubt that. I really highly doubt that they're gonna do that. Or, if they're awkward, then like, these are not the people that I want to interact with, and you move on and just chalk it up to, hey, I was able to formulate a phrase. They understood me if they say no. Or, yes, claro, right? Of course, claro que sim. Yeah, junta-te nós. So, try that, okay? That's a good one right there. Maybe if you go to the gym or you do something where you see people maybe on a regular basis, but you've never really opened up, you never broke the ice, nunca quebraram o gelo, never had that opening conversation, but maybe you see that they're watching something on the TV screen that's about something you're into. Again, just try to, posso juntar-me a ti? Can I work out beside you? Posso fazer exercícios ao teu lado, next to you, ao teu lado? Again, yes, no, we'll see, sim, no, vamos ver. But maybe you can expand that a little bit. Gostaria, would you like? Gostaria de tomar café. Would you like to have a coffee? Tomar café qualquer dia. Someday. Qualquer, someday, dia. So really nice and slow. Gostaria de tomar café qualquer dia. Just, would you like? It's a little bit polite too in how you formulate that usage of gostar, to like. Gostaria de tomar café qualquer dia. Now that's just open-ended, right? It could be yes. It could be yes, like really yes, or it could be yes, like yeah, we'll see. But either way, you tried, you interacted. If you get a response that fits, you practiced language, right? You practice the thing that you're there to try and do. And if it, works out into something, then you roll with it and you see what happens and you go with it, right? So that's the second phrase that I would bring up. Now, let's say you're in the situation now where you're able to have that conversation. The coffee's, you're at the cafe, right? Or you're at the gym and you're just trying to make small talk. Conversa, fazer conversa, dar conversa. You can ask a question again around the verb gostar, okay? To like, to enjoy. And it's the question, o que gostas de fazer no teu tempo livre? Okay? O que gostas, what do you like to do, de fazer. So gostar is always going to have the de preposition after it. It's an intransitive verb that requires that did there. So o que gostas de fazer no teu tempo livre. Now, tempo livre, free time. Now, I went with teu for the possessive adjective. You could definitely be a bit more formal and you go with seu. But I kind of feel like if you're talking to somebody in your age range that you're trying to be friends with, I think it really lowers the inhibition right off the bat in that you're not trying to be too formal with things. So you're going to go with teu. Personally, that's what I would do. I use seu for service situations or sua, depending on the gender of whatever instance or thing I'm dealing with or the person that I'm dealing with. But if you go with o que gostas de fazer no teu tempo livre, in your free time, no teu tempo livre, that's now opening up the door to conversation. And it's through conversation that you're going to make friends. Okay? Espero que este vídeo tenha ajudado. I hope this video has helped you. Espero que tenha ajudado. Se tiverem perguntas, just leave them in the comments below. Leave your questions and comments below, and I'll try to answer anything I can in a constructive way. Just be nice to each other. Até a próxima.